our last, but certainly not the least, will be presenting on a community-based approach in tourism development. ENP Chen Reyes Mencias is an environmental planner who specializes in sustainable tourism development and has provided and continually provides technical assistance to various audiences on tourism master planning and ecotourism development. She has authored several planning tools that had been designed to help clients and community partners come up with sustainable tourism plans that are pragmatic and implementable. So she is a three-time recipient of the ASEAN Community-Based Tourism Award and has also been engaged in crafting of ecotourism business plans for uh, sites such as the Mount Apo Natural Park, Aurora Memorial National Park, and other protected areas in the province of Aurora. So she conceptualized Ecotourism Philippines, a brand carried by several rural communities in outstanding natural locations in different parts of the Philippines. Reader's Digest, Asia and Australia presented her the Hero for Today title for her deep involvement in marine environmental conservation work, and she also received the Environmental Enhancement Award given by the International Underwater Foundation. So to talk more about this community-based approach in tourism development, may I call Ms. ENP Chen Reyes Mencias. Palakpakan po natin siya.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon na ba? All right, lunchtime na. I hope that you stay on up to the end of my lecture. Rest assured that it's not going to be too technical. Ewan ko bakit baligtad yung aking slide sa likod. Anyway, I'll be sharing something that's not technical but rather interesting because I'm going to present a new way of looking at things. So I hope that you stay on because you can relate because I'm sure that you have traveled in different parts of the country and have seen some of the things that I will show you, but also solutions to some of these problems. So I'll start with a quote, a very important quote, which is one of my favorite actually. Wait, right. It says here that no society makes an effort to conserve what it does not value. So if you believe in this statement, can you just give me a heart or a thumbs up? Again, no society makes an effort to conserve what it does not value. So we'll be focusing on that word value because this is the reason why I was able to come up with a framework that solves not all, but some of the problems of the tourism industry at the moment. So I'm going to start with the sustainable livelihood framework because I'm supposed to talk about livelihood, but I'm not going to talk about all of the parts of the framework, but focus only on this part, the capital assets of a community, because this is very important for us to understand. So we will have an idea of what value is about. So another way of showing you this livelihood pentagon is to show you the 5 assets of any community for that matter. It could be a province, could be a city, a sitio, a barangay, or a small island. They have the same kind of assets. So of course, the most expensive or valuable would be the natural capital. So why is that? Because it took millions of years to be created, to evolve. Landscapes and seascapes, they did not evolve overnight, but humans had been very sinful because we've been doing things that seem to be destroying the integrity of the natural capital. So human capital would be our education, our skills, our talents, our abilities, and social capital would be our relationships, even bayanihan, culture, those things that relate to people. Physical capital would be infrastructure, including flood control projects, flood mitigation projects. Financial capital is not only the fund that's given by the national government to local governments and grants that they are able to get from funding institution. It also involves savings and income of the residents, the people living there. So if you look at these assets, every community in the country has all of this. But the difference is that this one, you can compare the assets of the rural community and the urban area. Now we're talking about Metro Manila, so you can see the difference. Maybe 100 years ago, or perhaps, more than 50 years ago, it used to be a rural area. I used to live in Quezon City in Diliman campus, and I do remember it used to be very rural. Now it's urbanized. So with rural area, the highest, or the highest capital would be natural. So if you go to the provinces, places that are not yet touristy, you would see pristine ecosystems, places that are so clean, so natural and pristine. However, if you look at the human capital, communities are not that educated because they're so far from schools. They don't have the ability to send their children to school, and their physical development is also way behind because these are fifth class, fourth class municipalities that don't have that much fund to develop physically. However, aside from the natural capital, they have high social assets because everyone knows everyone. Magkukumare, magkumpare, magkakamag-anak, magkakaklase. Everyone knows everyone. In the urban area, when a place starts to urbanize and starts to attract migrants, it changes not just the physical landscape, but also the social landscape. So the natural environment seemed to be sacrificed most of the time. Unlike in other countries, I just came from Thailand in Pattaya, and we went to the beach the other day with my family. And I was quite surprised that that place has high-rise building, just like Rojas Boulevard, but people are swimming on the beach, doing all sorts of water sports. And I said, why can't we do it here in the Philippines? Why are we destroying our coastal areas when we urbanize? So in the urban area, you have people who are talented, educated, PhDs and all that. You have commerce and industries, malls, well-developed physical space. But the social aspect is also being sacrificed because now you have crimes, people don't know each other, and the culture is no longer there. So this is the big difference when we urbanize. We lose, the natural capital most of the time, and also the social fabric of the community. So why is this relevant to tourism? Because I'm a tourism planner, and over the years that I have been doing this, I realized that there's just so many things that we're doing wrong in when we create destinations. So to me, I'm not a scientist, but I was a diving instructor for many years, so I was constantly exposed to the coastal environment. To me, I believe that the natural environment is our life support system. And I'm sure if you're an ENP, you also strongly believe in this, that primarily the natural environment is our life support system. So in essence, if that is our life support system, it also sets the limit to growth. Cannot be unlimited growth. That's really a no-no. Nature tells us when to stop when we have already gone beyond the limit. However, it is sad that even though we learn from school that nature provides goods and services, we often forget that, you know, tourism is not the only reason nature exists. Um, over the years that LGUs are going into tourism, they seem to be blinded by one belief. I will not go through the different goods and services because I'm sure you're familiar with that. But the last line says there, recreation, tourism, and education. So it's just one aspect of the goods and services provided by nature. But over the years, my observation is that people are just shouting this battle cry that tourism is the engine of growth. It's true. However, over the years, again, the focus of tourism is economic growth. It's just one dimension, where in fact, it's multidimensional. That's one aspect that's really missing in the equation of tourism development in these countries, that we're focused mainly on the economic development, environment, social, even physical development, institution, health are not in the equation. So if you look at the how national government measures success of tourism, it's just measuring tourist arrivals and tourist receipts, which are both economic indicators. Even if they say that they're using satellite accounts, which are indicators that can compare our country with performance of other countries, they are mostly also economic indicators. So you often find LGUs and destinations becoming trapped in the same problem that Boracay went through, that Coron, that Puerto Galera, that Baguio, Panglao, and now El Nido and Siargao are going through. It's because of the belief that tourism is just about economic growth. So when Boracay was closed in 2018, we realized that tourism can also be an engine of destruction. It can actually destroy communities because of greed, because of too much focus on just one dimension of the industry. And we forget that there are other members of the community that are also affected by the many pitfalls of uncontrolled and unregulated tourism industry. All right, what are the major problems associated with tourism in our country? Waste production from liquid and solid waste. And so the more people there are, if we focus on the numbers, because that's the measure, you can imagine the increase in the number of waste production, including pollution of our water bodies. And water issues, this is quite real in many popular destinations already. Now it's going to be summer. This will be a serious issue in Sagada, in Boracay, in Panglao, in many places that are now attracting hordes of tourists. Two things about water: it's quantity and quality. So in Panglao, for example, they don't have water anymore on the island, so they have to source out water from the mainland, from Tagbilaran, because whatever water they have underground is already salty and has coliform bacteria. So if you don't have the proper mitigating measures to prevent that, and to gather water to make sure that, during the rainy season, that percolates down to the aquifers, if there's no conscious effort to do that, to recover and to make sure that there's enough water for the industry, then you have a problem. And water, by the way, is shared by all people of a destination, not just by tourists. They're not just for resorts, but they're for everyone, including the people living there. Another issue is food insecurity, because not everyone's producing food. In fact, a lot of communities are importing food. So if you attract tourists, the first thing that will happen is price increase. And those who are not taken in by the industry for jobs would suffer greatly, because their buying power would decrease significantly. So eventually you'll end up with greater poverty. So this is something that is real. And so some of the indicators of bad tourism would be beggars in the street, crime, against women, children, and syndicates coming in, drug trafficking, and all that. So these are indicators of bad tourism development, which are present in many popular destinations in the country. Right. So because of those issues, my team decided to come up with a framework, which started to develop and gel in our heads way back in 2007, when we were involved in Palawi Island Protected Landscape and Seascape. I have to make a correction, by the way. It was mentioned by the host that I received um, ASEAN Award 3 times. It's not actually me. It's actually the community in Palawi Island that I worked with for 8 years. It's community-based tourism project. So they were the recipients of 3 time ASEAN recipient of a community-based tourism award, not me. All right, so this is Likas Kayang Turismo, which came from the term Likas Kayang Pag-unlad, which if you're not familiar is the Filipino translation of sustainable development. So now Likas Kayang Turismo is a brand that we carry, which literally means tourism within the bounds of nature, because we know that nature sets the limit to growth. So there are so many components of this framework, and I'm not going to go through that because we don't have that much time, but I want to emphasize that the basic principle behind this is economic incentive for conservation. What we want is to create that economic incentive, because if you think about it, most people, especially the marginalized ones, those people who are in the survival mode, only look at nature as a source of livelihood, source of income. So, in the absence of any ability to sustainably use nature for livelihood, they do illegal stuff. And that's the reason why for so many years we were dealing with, illegal fishing, illegal harvesting of timber, illegal sale of wildlife and all that, because they don't know any better. So, and people on survival mode are only thinking about what they're gonna eat on a daily basis. They're not gonna think about the future. They're not gonna think about conservation at all. Walang pa akong tsinsahan dyan, because they're just thinking about what they're gonna feed their family on a daily basis. So this framework aims to create that economic incentive for conservation. So two things: community-based sustainable tourism, which has been proven to work as a tool or strategy to increase conservation or protection of natural heritage, and then high value, low volume strategy in tourism development. High value because, after all, our base product are high value in respect of the fact that we will be using these resources, God-given resources for tourism. They have to be high value. Low volume so that we don't destroy the very resource from where tourism is anchored on with sheer numbers. So these are the two strategies of, among others, of the framework. So the first thing that we do when we go to a site is to look at the ecosystems of the place. So there's wetland. So we're talking about coastal areas, lake, rivers, mangrove area, coral reefs. And of course, we're connected to the forest, so include the forest, reach to reef pa rin. And then we realize that in many of these places, whether you're in the coastal area or terrestrial, there are a lot of wildlife, including birds. So we decided to include birding sites. The next thing that we do is to determine or analyze what are the activities that can be done considering what the place has. Like if you have a lake, a river, or a mangrove area, you can do paddling, or you can build a boardwalk. So you can have school children and tourists walking safely around the mangrove area and learning about species of mangroves and ecology. Or you can have a marine protected area and introduce snorkeling in the multiple use zone. Or you can have birding sites. The birding market is so big, and all they have to do is to show where the birds are, right? So these are the things that we do. Look at the ecosystem, determine the activities that can be done. And then the next thing is to determine the kind of infrastructure required of the place to make it accessible, to make it safe for people, and to make the experience fun and educational, and also to protect the very environment from human impacts. So these are the reasons why we need infrastructure, and they don't need to be huge infrastructure projects. Could be as basic as a jetty or what do you call this, mooring buoy, trail development, small hanging bridge, boardwalks, viewing area, stuff like that. It doesn't have to be billion worth of projects. And then the next thing is to determine the kind of signages or messaging that we want to show visitors. So signages are important. They're directional, education, informative, or warning, stuff like that. So, services. Now, when we think about the services, we think about enterprises or income streams for the people living in the place. We realize that community-based tourism really provides opportunities for people who have not even gone to college or have not even gone to high school to provide services to visitors visiting their own community, right? So these are actually people that we've worked with over the years. You know, we have snorkeling guides in Palawi Island, we have trek guides, and we have birding guides and paddling guides, you know, depending on type of activity that's being offered on site. So basically, what we're thinking about is identifying the different services that are required for visitors to have a very pleasant, enjoyable, highly educational experience on site. And these services are the ones that will be offered to beneficiary communities. They have to be organized. And so, because ecosystems are highly sensitive, uh, we have developed modules for specialty guide trainings, which are now registered as modules for under the Department of Tourism. So for wetlands, rivers, and mangroves, we have paddling guide training, and then in birding sites, we have birding guide training. For marine protected areas and coral reef areas, we have reef rangers, and then in terrestrial areas, we have trek guides. And support services would include provision of food preparation, souvenir development, campsite development, and then also transport like boats or tricycles and all that. No? So it's really an analysis of the different value chain, different um, components of the value chain until the visitor reaches the place and experiences the site. And so in Palawi Island, for example, that we worked with for 8 years, it's now a three-time ASEAN recipient. There's about like 14 enterprises already on that island, and people lives were improved from eating twice a day to actually being able to send their children to college and being able to repair their houses. So it has been proven to work, but it takes a long time because communities, you know, gestation period is quite very long. It takes years to organize them. Enhancements would be sustainable souvenirs. For example, this brown stuff here. These are seeds from Xylocarpus granatum. It's a species of mangrove found in the Philippines in many mangrove forests. And the fruits are like suha, no? And when you open it, it would have seeds like this. And when you dry it, could be like a puzzle. And no two fruits or no two seeds are exactly alike. So things like this that it makes the experience memorable and recommendable. And so that process we have actually packaged into four kinds of enterprise development projects depending on the ecosystem. So we have Buhay Dagat, Buhay Gubat, Buhay Ibon, Buhay Ilog. And the word buhay, of course, is livelihood from a living environment. So Buhay Gubat focuses on marine protected areas. We prefer declared marine protected areas because there would be organized groups already of fisher folks that can be beneficiaries of projects, and they could also be guides in their own community. So they'll be earning as guides. And other members of the organized group can also prepare food, develop souvenirs, and other services. Buhay Gubat would be on the terrestrial area. So they have waterfalls, they have hiking trails, viewing areas. And so mostly beneficiaries would be people living in high places, including farmers. For Buhay Ilog, this would be people living along rivers, in the mangrove areas and lakes. And we have trained several guides already, and In fact, in Masbate, we have two communities there that are also award-winning. One group actually is composed of all women, and they are bringing tourists paddling in the mangrove area. Excuse me. So we have been doing this for many years, and sites are all over the country, all the way to Mindanao. So Buhay Ibon, there are fewer sites because it's this highly specialized market, but we realize that birds are everywhere. They're not just in the forest, but also in the coastal area. And so we conceptualize tourism products based on the offerings of the community. So we branded them, came up with these products, depending on whether you're a reef, boardwalk, or you have lakes and rivers. And in 2013, we were involved in coming up with a master plan for Occidental Mindoro, which composed of 11 municipalities. However, we were able to develop plans for the four out of 11 municipalities. So during the 2013 initiative, we only covered 7. And out of that initiative, we were able to conceptualize 31 community-based products. And if you look at this amount here, that's in pesos, we were able to project potential gross sales out of these products, that if the LGU invest in creating, let's say, the sites, putting the proper infrastructure, training the guides, training the people that will serve food, etc., creating access, 410 million will pour into these communities in 7 municipalities. So the opportunity for financial upliftment is really there. So with Occidental Mindoro, these are out of 31 sites. These are the ones that focus on riverine ecosystem, lakes and rivers and mangroves and coral reefs. So there's a lot of opportunity for community-based tourism in that part of our environment, because there's just so many stories that the communities can tell about their connection to the birds, the wildlife, the fishery, livelihood, and all that. There's just so much education that can be learned, that can be generated out of an experience in the communities. Our goal, actually, with this project, because I said that we wanted to create, excuse me, an economic incentive for people to improve their lives, specifically financial stability. So we want everyone to have at least 4 financial assets. 1 is emergency fund, 2 is cash reserves, 3 is protection and insurance, and lastly, retirement. Excuse me. So these are the 4 assets under the concept of wealth generation that can stabilize financial status of anybody, including ourselves. So if we have this, and if we also have 2 sources of income, which is embedded in the principle of wealth generation, then you would have the best chance of having financial stability. And so to be able to achieve that concept, we develop what is called Ecotourism Philippines business model, which entails the local government investing in a visitor center that will be run as a social enterprise. It will be the store or the tindahan of all the products of the community, which will be bought by tour operators, travel agencies, and tourists directly from the visitor center. So that's how it will earn. And so the community service providers, the guides, the one who cooks food, produces souvenirs, can be co-owner of the visitor center. They can invest there. It can be a cooperative. So that could be a source of passive income for them. So that's the business model. So what we're doing here is elevating the framework from merely asking from the LGU if they can fund the project, or maybe funding institutions, they can provide funding, to earning, making it more sustainable. because if communities rely on NGOs, especially what's happening in the world right now, then it's not going to be long lasting. If they rely on LGUs, by the time we have the next election, that connection, that relationship will be gone. So, but if they're earning, and if communities, including civil society, is part of a destination management organization, which used to be the Tourism Council, then they have a voice, and they have the power to make sure that even if there's any change of guard in the next election, their livelihood will continue, and it to support their family's future. So going back to the word value, there are many expressions of value. Unfortunately, when it comes to tourism, people are so myopic that they're only looking at the economic value of tourism, when in fact there's so much, because it's multidimensional. So I just want to I'm always emphasizing this to the communities that we talk to, because as you're earning from the use of nature, you really have to take care of it, because it's your source of income and livelihood. So linking this, I'm sorry, my voice is really, I don't have any sleep yet. Linking this to Metro Manila, I just learned recently that there are 10 wetlands surrounding Metro Manila, and I don't really know the status of these wetlands, but I'm pretty sure it's not anymore as it was years ago or decades ago. So I think we have to review how we look at these wetlands, because as we are doing projects right after the other, I think eventually these 10 wetlands in the years to come will be gone. So it's something that we need to talk about, or we need to have conversations with, we need to be thinking about, because these wetlands are important and they are a life support system. So to end my presentation, the state of the natural environment of Metro Manila, or any place in the Philippines for that matter, reflects the people's sense of value. So if we value something, we protect it. If not, then we just use it for earning income. So it's sad, but it's the truth about what's happening all over the country. So with that, thank you so much. I hope that I was able to share something valuable to you. Pardon my voice. Wala pa kasi akong tulog eh. So sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Well, kasi pag urbanized na, syempre, meron na tayong pollution, meron ng urban blight, you have informal settlers living along, river systems and lakes and all that, including yung Laguna Lake, no? But once mag-rehab ka, because ang initial rehab goal mo is really to bring back the integrity or the function of the ecosystem. But after that, you need to enjoin or make sure the community living in that place would also get other benefits, because you need them as stewards. You need them to take care of that ecosystem, because the national government or even the local government cannot be there 24/7. So you need to give them some role, but they need to get something in return, you know. So, mas mahirap mag-community-based tourism sa urban area, kasi medyo iba na yung ugali ng mga tao. Alam mo yun, mas madali, mas madali na sila mag-away-away. Unlike yun sa mga rural area na okay pa yung ugali, magkakilala pa sila, wala pang saksakan sa likod and all that. But it can be piloted. Who knows, di ba? Urban na ganyan. Like sa Laguna Lake, no, that could be done. Or if there's like sewage or canal system natin dito na maayos natin. Alam mo sa Europe ganun naman, dati ganyan din naman eh, 'di ba? Some areas, I was in Belgium, and they told me it took 20 years to rehabilitate yung mga canals nila, and now they have tourism in those places, not thriving. Kailangan lang talaga i-rehabilitate muna and bring back the function, that integrity of that water body, and then you can have people visiting that place. So, mas magastos lang kasi magre-rehab ka pa. But it's possible if we really want to do it. the tourism industry is not a simple industry, it's very complicated. Kaya lang kasi ang national government, training tayo over the years. It's as simple as promotions and marketing. And even up to now, the focus is getting as many tourists as possible to destinations which are not even prepared to receive them. That's why threat ang mga turista to our natural ecosystems and cultural heritage sites, no? Kasi nga hindi ready. And sometimes, yung mga LGU, hindi nila alam na po-promote na sila even before mag-develop sila na wala pang plano eh. And sometimes mga plans natin copy-paste, compliance kasi nga required na ng DILG. So so many problems, no. Ang approach kasi rin sometimes top down eh. In yung Tourism Act natin is so much focus on getting foreign investors coming in. Ang daming mga tax holidays and incentives for them. And yet, parang rhetoric lang yung environmental conservation dun eh, sa batas na yun eh. So, parang maraming kailangan gawin in terms of capacitating the people in the destinations themselves to manage their own community as tourism sites. Hindi pwedeng promote lang nila yung attractions nila. In my opinion, suicide yung mag-promote ka ng attraction. You have to promote products and experiences. So that means when you say product, may infrastructure ka na dyan, may public restroom man lang, di ba? Or access, di ba? And meron kang services. People are trained to provide those services and you have standards. Di ba? Hindi yung attraction lang, may waterfalls lang nilabas na ng vlogger. That's one major problem natin ngayon eh. Vloggers are turning into tour operators na wala silang accreditation whatsoever and pag nagka-aksidente tatakbuhan. And now there's also a trend towards having franchises ng mga tour operators. Alam mo sa industriya ng tourism, tour operators are like the middleman ng agriculture na hindi sila yung naghihirap pero sila yung kumikita ng milyon-milyon. So now with community-based tourism, we're evening out the playing field and teaching communities to have their own products, hindi lang tour operators ang may products. But we're not taking them out of the value chain kasi kailangan sila because sila yung may link sa market. But they need to respect that communities can also own products. Hindi yung sila yung may-ari ng produkto. Tapos yung community nanonood lang pag nagdadala sila ng turista. So there's so many things that needs to change within the industry, the way that we're doing it. Yung framework that we're introducing is just the start probably. It's not going to solve all the problems, but at least, may realization na kami of what can be done. And also somebody asked about yung sa engineering, what can they do, no? Yung bantingin natin na tourism is all about hard infrastructure. That's also wrong. Kasi soft infrastructure is just as important as hard infrastructure. So we have to look at the people, their capabilities, their ability to provide the services and to benefit out of taking care of the natural and heritage sites natin because they are the capital for tourism development.